Best. Slight foul there with Harris on Best, and he's had a bang in the back.
Some players were loved, some were hated, and some were feared. Ron "Chopper" Harris wasn't built for applause. He was built to break rhythm, to make the winger stop running, to make the forward think twice. He gave Chelsea everything, and took even more from the men who tried to run past him. No drama, just silence. And tackles you felt the next day. They called him Chopper before they ever met him. And after they met him, they didn't ask why, he didn't laugh, he didn't pose, he didn't ask questions, he just did the job. Game after game, season after season, 7 to 95 times. He stayed. While others were sold, promoted, or remembered, he stayed. Even when the knees stiffened, even when the crowd forgot what he carried, even when the pain never left after full time. That's not loyalty, that's something colder. He was sent to shut people down. And if they stood up again, he made sure they didn't forget the cost. And there were some, a few, he would never forgive. Some feared what he did. Others feared who gave him permission to do it. And then there were the few who stood beside him and said nothing. Because they understood him. Subscribe, not for the goals, but for the weight of the names that carried the game through blood. He moved like light over wet grass, balanced like a boxer, and punished hesitation without raising his voice. George Best. Some called him the finest player of his generation. Ron Harris didn't argue, but he didn't flinch either. He said it once, flat, direct. Marking him was easier said than done. No smile, no praise, just truth. Best didn't run from tackles. He waited for them, and when they came, he slid through them like he was never touched. There's a photo fans still talk about, a poster from the early 70s. Best standing still, foot on the ball, both arms wide as if to say, come on then, try it. Chopper watched. Crowd roaring behind, no words needed. The moment lived longer than the match. Because this wasn't about beating a man. It was about making him look helpless. And for Harris, that was the one thing he couldn't accept. Best had that power to turn fear into theatre, to make defenders feel small, not by force but by calm, and Harris knew it. That's why he never played light against him. He didn't chase, he didn't admire, he went through him. Body first, no warning, no mercy. Sometimes Best stayed up, sometimes he didn't. But Harris never changed the angle, never softened the hit. Because even the great ones needed to be reminded, you don't walk through this game untouched. Not while he's standing there. And he was always standing there. He didn't dance, he didn't glide, he didn't wear white boots. Norman Hunter wasn't there to play. He was there to remove you from the game, and Chopper Harris knew it. Chelsea versus Leeds. 1970 FA Cup final, one of the most violent matches ever broadcast on British television. No handshakes. No forgiveness. Just boots and memory. Eddie Gray limped off that pitch, because Harris made sure he would. But when Harris looked across the halfway line, he saw something that looked too familiar. Hunter didn't talk. He didn't smile. He didn't warn you either. And for once, Chopper wasn't the only man playing like the rules didn't exist. Harris said it himself. We didn't like them. They didn't like us. That final wasn't football. It was ritual, a kind of war where shirts didn't matter, but the scars did. Harris went in hard. Hunter came back harder. Elbows, shoulders, faces close enough to hear breathing. Neither man blinked. There's footage from that match where time seems to stop. Bodies flying, tackles crashing, no cards, no hesitation, just two men who knew the only way to survive this match was to finish it standing. The crowd remembers the goal scorers, but the players, they remember the bruises that didn't heal. Because that day, even Ron Harris had to share the darkness. There are tackles you remember, and then there are the ones you don't forgive. Tommy Smith, Liverpool's enforcer, the one man who didn't move out of the way, and didn't care who was coming. He didn't just hit, he stared. He followed you down the tunnel. He left something in the tackle that didn't fade. Ron Harris didn't flinch for many. But Tommy wasn't like the others. He didn't shout, he didn't warn. He just made sure you paid for everything. And when Harris crossed him with studs up, elbows high, Smith didn't walk away. He remembered, and he waited. They fought on the pitch. Two captains, two defenders, two men who believed in violence as language. There are no apologies, no warm memories, no patched up interviews, just silence. just edge. Because some fouls aren't about the ball, they're about something deeper, something territorial, something unforgivable. Harris never forgave him. Not because Smith hurt him, but because Smith gave it back. Exactly the same way. The worst betrayals never came from boots. They came from polished shoes. From men upstairs, who smiled, nodded, and then erased him. Tommy Docherty didn't whisper. He commanded. Larrup someone early, and Harris did, every time, without hesitation. Dave Sexton saw what others feared. He didn't tame the storm, he used it. Silent glances from the sideline were enough, and Chopper would strike. Even Don Revie, on enemy ground at Leeds, understood that brutality was strategy. His players hacked and harassed, and Harris fit the mould perfectly. Ron Seward, Tommy Docherty, Dave Sexton, not one of them stopped him. Not one told him to hold back. Because they all knew, some men tackle, some men are taught to destroy. Harris was no rogue. He was a system, a sanctioned weapon, a blunt tool given a clean shirt and the words, "Go out and win it." They let him off the leash, then shut the door when the blood dried. Not a word, not a look, just silence, from the same hands that once pointed him at the enemy. He was the blade, but every blade needs a hilt. Ian Hutchinson hurled missiles from the touchline. His throw-ins didn't arc, they detonated. When chaos erupted, Harris was already there. Peter Houseman never chased headlines, but he ran until the pitch gave way. He covered the mess behind every blow. Eddie McCready didn't flinch. He sprinted into danger with a smile, the first into fire and the last out. Marvin Hinton stood beside Harris. Didn't talk, didn't shake. When others backed off, Hinton squared up. These weren't stars, they were foundations. They cleared the space. They muted the critics. They let Harris be Harris and swept up whatever was left. They didn't stop the storm, they carried it. Every foul Chopper made was backed by trust. Not just from the managers, but from the men who bled beside him. When fans feared the number 6, they forgot the 5 others who let the monster breathe. He didn't leave football. Football left him. He never won a full England cap. Only 4 England U23 appearances. They said he was too cruel for the shirt. But not too cruel to face the best week after week. He gave Chelsea 795 games. They gave him silence. No parade, no chorus. Just an empty dressing room. And the sound of boots he no longer wore. And the fans, even some of them moved on. Because beauty is remembered. Pain gets buried. He didn't play for applause, he played to win. But the men who only bled for results, they rarely get remembered in full. His family, Lee, Paul, Mark, and stayed out of the light. No interviews, no books. Just private loyalty to a man who never asked for praise. Feared by thousands, remembered by few. He didn't need to be celebrated, he needed to be obeyed. And once the boots came off, the world looked away. There were tackles, and then there were warnings carved into bone. He didn't always win the duel, but they remembered the pain. Not one opponent left the pitch untouched. Some limped, some cursed. Most stayed quiet. He didn't chase highlight reels, he chased hesitation and punished it. One clip, one lunge, studs slicing through rhythm like a guillotine. No mercy, no doubt. That wasn't a foul, that was a message. You can dance past defenders, but you'll crawl past me. He wasn't graceful, didn't need to be. Because when he moved, everything else stopped. Opponents backed off. Crowds held their breath. Even referees sometimes looked away. He didn't make the game beautiful. He made it feel dangerous. Legacy isn't goals. Sometimes it's the silence after a collision. He didn't need words, he needed moments. And those moments still live in knees, memories, and cold stares. He's 81 now. No shows, no stages, no spotlight. He walks slow, talks less. But the eyes, still sharp, still cold, still carry the memory of men who tested him and lost. The world forgot. But his silence never did. No fanfare, no soft headlines. Just boots in the hall. Quiet, unmoved. He doesn't ask for anything. He never did. He let the tackles speak, let the bruises stay behind, and now, with the roar long gone, he's still watching. Not smiling, not forgiving, just remembering. Because some men retire, others vanish. But a few, they leave behind a stare that outlasts the game. Comment the name he'd never forgive. Subscribe, because fear doesn't fade. It waits.